climate officials say global average temperatures last month were the hottest since records began. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says if surface temperatures remain elevated at the same level for the remainder of the year, 2014 will set a new record for the warmest annual average temperature. The South African athlete Oscar Pistorius is due to be sentenced today for shooting dead his girlfriend Reba Steenkamp. The prosecution is seeking a sentence of 10 years. The defence has argued that Pistorius should be spared jail and given a community sentence. The athlete's sister and brother, Amy and Carl Pistorius, have been speaking publicly for the first time about the impact of the shooting.
It's something that my brother will carry with him for the rest of his life, and as well as, obviously Reba's family and friends and us. It's not something you get over.
The landscape of our lives remains changed forever.
And that's the latest BBC News.
That was Jerry Smits. I'm Jackie Leonard, and you're listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service. And we begin with the strong words of the United Nations Human Rights Chief Ivan Shimonovich, who says the militants of the group calling itself Islamic State may be guilty of war crimes and attempted genocide. The accusation followed a week-long fact-finding mission. So, where did he go and to whom did he speak? Nick Bryant is at the UN in New York.
He went to Baghdad, he met the Kurds, he tried to evaluate the situation in the ground as pertained to human rights. And what he's come back with after this 7-day trip is obviously a very dismal view of Islamic State in its own human rights record. He said that their idea of justice, for instance, is to commit murder. It's the antithesis of human rights. And he's also accused the group of widespread and systematic violations that may amount to war crimes, and also of carrying out atrocities, Yazidi people in particular, that may amount to an attempt to commit genocide.
And just remind us of what happened to the Yazidi people.
You'll probably remember that the Yazidi people were stranded on that mountain in kind of almost sort of biblical conditions. They didn't have shelter, they were unable to escape. There was the fear that ISIS was going to cut off every single route, and that was one of the things that sparked a big humanitarian airdrop and the Americans managing to break the siege. So that is why the Yazidi people have been in the forefront, really, of international concerns and international action in Iraq. And what Shimonovich has said is that Islamic State left Yazidis no alternative. He said they basically gave them an ultimatum: you either convert or we'll kill you.
Obviously very strong words then from the UN. What chance is there of anyone being brought to justice? What can the UN do about it?
Well, one thing the UN does do is gather intelligence and gather evidence with the prospect of launching prosecutions in the future. Another thing that the human rights do, obviously, in these instances is to highlight these cases of human rights abuse. And Shimonovich has come back with some very strong personal testimony. He's been speaking to a father, for instance, whose 4 sons were murdered because they refused to convert to Islam. He spoke to a young boy who'd survived a mass execution in which his father and brothers had been murdered despite being hit with 6 bullets. He spoke to a 12-year-old girl who escaped sexual slavery.
Nick Bryant in New York. For the first time in recent weeks, there are signs that there may be progress in the response to the Ebola crisis. Nigeria has been declared Ebola-free, and the president of Ghana has said international aid to tackle Ebola is beginning to arrive. One country that's doing much to help is Cuba. At a meeting in Havana on Monday, its president Raul Castro warned of Ebola's potential to become, in his words, one of the gravest pandemics in human history.
Cuba is willing to work shoulder to shoulder with all other countries, including the United States. According to the Cuban health system and its modest experience, coordinated willpower is needed.
Will Grant is our Latin America correspondent, and he explained what Cuba had offered.
It's actually offered and indeed sent already large numbers of doctors and nurses, which is probably the biggest sort of human send of actual people. Everybody else has, in some cases, promised money. Some people have given money, but it's Cuba, an island of just 11 million